So this book, The Middle-Aged Master, this is my answer to every time I've been asked, what's your big secret to good health at your age? I like when they say at your age. And of course, everybody wants a one-sentence answer. They want to hear that I'm taking some sort of magical supplement, or that I've discovered some ancient training that I'm keeping a secret. But the truth is, it's not one thing, it's hundreds of little things that I do, or equally important, do not do each and every day. So all these little things add up to big results over time. So let me ask you something. When was the last time that you knew exactly what you should do, but you just didn't do it? Not because it was too difficult to understand, not because you didn't have time, but because you just didn't feel like it. Maybe it was working out, maybe it was eating better, maybe it was getting to bed earlier, maybe it was doing something that you knew would help move your life forward, and yet you just didn't do it. That gap right there between what you know and what you actually do, that is where your life is decided. Not in big dramatic moments, not in New Year's resolutions, but in those quiet, repeated, almost invisible daily decisions. And that to me is one of the biggest battles of adult life, because most people already know a lot. We know we should move more, we know we should eat better, we know we should be more disciplined, we know we should spend less time distracted and more time building and creating. So this is not an information problem, it's an execution problem. And that's where this idea comes in. Drifting. Because in my opinion, the real enemy for most people is not failure, it's not catastrophe, it's not some giant collapse, it's drift. And drift looks normal, which is what makes it so dangerous. You still go to work, you still take care of your family, you still function, but you have no real direction of your own. You're like this guy out in the middle of the ocean, right? Just being pushed around by the currents, not steering your own life. You stop really pushing forward. You stop sharpening yourself. You stop doing difficult things on purpose. You stop building momentum. And because everything seems fine, you don't really notice how much you're losing. But your edge starts to go. Your focus starts to go. The intentionality starts to go. And it doesn't happen in one big dramatic moment. Your life doesn't fall apart overnight, but it slowly loosens its grip. Not because of one giant mistake, but because of 100 little choices we make where comfort keeps beating growth. And I've lived this myself. At age 18, I was a super athlete. I was on the varsity wrestling team and the varsity tennis team at a school of about 2,000 students. I lived for training. I loved doing any type of physical activity. During wrestling season, we actually had training before school started, then we'd do a full day of classes, and then we'd train for 2.5 hours after school. We also trained for 3 hours on Saturday. Thank God our coach was a religious man and he gave us Sundays off. But I was hardcore. I was in shape. I could run for kilometers. I could play tennis for 4 hours and then go hit the weight room. I had energy. I had discipline. I had momentum. And then my life changed. I went off to university, far away from home for the first time. But more importantly, I had left my structure behind without thinking about how to build a new structure. For the first time since I was 6 years old, I wasn't involved in organized sports. I had no more parents or coaches around to help me. For the first few months, I still worked out regularly. I even did a half triathlon. But then I slowly started to drift. I wasn't eating healthy anymore. In America, we have a phrase called the freshman 15, because most kids, when they go off to college, they gain on average 15 pounds because they don't have their parents watching what they're eating anymore. It's about 8 kilos. And I had gained 10 kilos my freshman year, and it certainly wasn't muscle. I should also mention that up until I was 19 years old, I'd never had an alcoholic drink, never smoked a cigarette, never taken any drugs. My goal at the time was to work in TV and films, so I was spending most of my extra time at the school TV and radio stations. And over time, I drifted. Not all at once, and that's the important part. There was no big, giant, dramatic collapse. It was just a slow slide into habits that no longer served me. Started with hanging out late with friends. Then I stopped training so much. I stopped running altogether. And my food choices kept getting worse and worse and worse. I basically lived on pizza and fast food. Then I drank alcohol for the first time. A year later, there wasn't a week that went by where I wasn't drinking or getting drunk. I was still doing my schoolwork. I was getting good grades. I had multiple part-time jobs. So my life seemed fine, and I didn't realize the drift. Then I graduated and moved to Hollywood, California, and all those bad habits followed me. Too much fast food, too much drinking and smoking, no training. All I thought about was work and relaxing after work. And it was a strange mental state when I look back at it. It's as if there was some type of career roadmap that I was following, and everything I just assumed would come along with it. But it really wasn't my map. It wasn't my life. I was drifting like this fat bastard in the middle of the ocean, just going with the flow. It was someone else's programming, and it led to less intentional living. And that's how it often happens. We don't wake up one day and say, today I'm going to become a weaker, softer, less disciplined version of myself. No, it happens gradually. One choice at a time, one excuse at a time, one indulgence at a time, one avoided effort at a time. And then one day, you look up and realize, I am not where I thought I'd be. I'm not who I used to be, and I am definitely not moving toward who I want to become. And here is a quick look at my health journey. Forget the first 18 years, but at 18, great health, little knowledge, little experience. Then I gained lots of experiences, good and bad. By the time I was 25, when I should have been in great health, I was in the worst health of my life. I was the fattest I'd ever been. I wasn't training. I was sick all the time. I sustained a very serious lower back injury, which I still have to deal with to this day. Then I gained more knowledge and more experiences, but most importantly, I put them to action. Not just knowing what to do, but actually doing it. So by the time I hit 45, I felt like I was in pretty good health. And if I keep on this current trajectory with these current habits, I expect to be in even better health, up until a point, obviously. Once I hit 90, I might take a small downturn. So one day, many years ago, in my early 40s, I was looking in the mirror, and I was sucking in my gut, and I was trying to flex a little bit, and I didn't like what I was seeing. And suddenly an idea came to me. Personal responsibility. Not guilt, not self-hatred, but responsibility. Because although you don't control everything, you do control much more than you think. You control what you eat today. You control whether you learn something useful today. You control whether you do that hard thing or avoid it again. But most importantly, you control your thoughts. And those thoughts in your head, they become the words that you use. And those words that you use become the actions that you take. And those actions, repeatedly, become your habits. And your habits define your character, your identity, who you are. And that character becomes your destiny. So to take a shortcut from A to Z, we can say that what we think, we become. And my comeback in life didn't begin with one giant heroic act. It began with small, daily actions done repeatedly over time. And I'd like to say that I did this right away, but I didn't. What happened was, I thought, good God, I am years behind where I should be. So I would crash diet, I would train too hard too fast, I would get sick, and I would injure myself. Then I couldn't train for about a month or so. And I'd like to say that I learned my lesson the first time, but I didn't. It became a pattern, and I did this for years. I would freak out, crash diet, train too hard, get injured. And I did this over and over and over again, which is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. But finally, I learned my lesson, and I realized that I needed to start small, be patient, and be consistent. So I want to talk about 3 core ideas. The first one is this: consistency beats intensity. The gray ladder on the left, that is consistency. That's doing the small things day after day after day, week after week, year after year. That makes a good ladder. On the right, we have the yellow, which represents intensity, right? Going hardcore, boom! And then not doing anything for a long time. Then picking it up again, right? That is intensity. That makes for a very poor ladder. But people love intensity. Big plans, big declarations, big motivation. But intensity comes and goes. Consistency is what changes your life. One workout doesn't change your life. Hundreds of them do. One healthy meal doesn't change your life. Thousands of them will. One focused day doesn't change your future, but a pattern does. Consistency over time yields results. Consistency over time yields results. That's how saving money works, right? If you get 3% interest on your savings for one day, it's nothing. Percent of a percent of a percent of a fraction of a percent. However, 3% over 40 years, well, now you've got a nice retirement fund. You need to be consistent to reach your goals. And the second idea is this: take responsibility for what you can control. There are many things beyond our control, but you can always control your response to something. So let's look at things we can control. You can control your thoughts and ideas. You control your words, your attitude and your gratitude, being thankful, your reactions. You control your habits and routines, your decisions, your health and self-care, your behavior. You also control your body language, the boundaries you set with others, when or if you forgive others, how you speak to and treat others, how you let others affect you, where you give your time, energy, and attention, and what you do right now in this present moment. These are all things we can control. There are things that are outside of our control. Past events, the unforeseeable future, accidents, natural disasters, and the weather, although we love to complain about the weather. The world economy, unexpected changes, and bad news. And just a quick note on bad news. I worked in TV news for almost a decade. And the news media uses basic psychology against us so that we watch and they get ratings and they get money. And what we used to say in the newsroom is, if it bleeds, it leads. meaning they would find the most horrific stories from around the world to get people to tune in, okay? They want you to feel scared and angry. So yes, it's good to be informed, but try not to get emotionally caught up in all the news stories. Other things we can't control. Other people, which is a huge shock to every parent and teacher. You cannot control other people. You can influence them, but you can't control them. You can't control their opinions, thoughts, feelings, actions, words, attitudes, ideas, behavior, body language, mistakes, beliefs, perceptions, reactions, or what they post online. I have some fun experience with this because I have been active on social media and YouTube for some years now. And I once posted a video about training, doing dumbbell training for biceps. And the comment was, "How could you, you Nazi?" What do you do with that? Okay, you can't control what people are going to post online. Some people are just miserable. It's best to just ignore them, not get involved in some kind of Twitter debate. You're never going to win, and you're just going to waste your time and energy. So there's real power in stopping the endless focus on what is outside your control and getting real serious about what is inside your control. That's where you're going to make changes in your life. The third idea is habits. Habits are guardrails. And here it says, you don't choose your future, you choose your habits, and your habits choose your future. Many people think habits are restrictive, but I think good habits are actually freeing because habits reduce the chaos. Good habits can keep you from drifting. They guide you when your emotion changes, and they protect your future when the motivation disappears. In other words, habits are guardrails. They don't just guide you, they keep you from running off the road. And once you develop a habit, the subconscious mind takes over. You just set it and forget it. If you've ever seen a toddler trying to walk for the first time, when they're taking those steps, they actually have to think about their feet. Okay, this right foot comes up and now it goes down and now I keep my balance. Now I drag this left foot forward. Okay, but once you learn to walk, your subconscious mind takes over that task. Hopefully none of you still have to think about walking, right? Same thing with driving. Once you learn how to drive, you don't think about all the things you're doing when you're driving. You just do it. That is the subconscious mind at work. So the mind is divided into two parts, the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind is the here and now. That's analysis, decisions, focus, logical thinking, short-term memory, and willpower. So, how much time does the average person spend in their conscious mind? That's analysis, decisions, and focus. Do we have any guesses? Give me a number. Give me a percent. Any number. Throw it out.
36.
36. Okay, about a third. That's a fair guess. The answer is a quite shocking 20%. This is the iceberg, the part you see above the sea. That's your conscious mind. So 20% of the time, we're focused, we're making decisions, we're thinking logically, we're using our willpower or our short-term memory. The subconscious mind is running the show 80% of the time. Now, obviously, it's automatic bodily functions, your heart rate, your breathing, your blood flow. It also runs your belief system, your identity, your emotions, your creativity, your intuition, your long-term memory, your values, your self-worth, your protective reactions, and your habits. This is why habits are so powerful. Once you set them in motion, your subconscious mind is going to push you into those habits, for good or for bad. So most of the day, we are operating on autopilot. So, how do we apply this to real life? For me, it comes down to three areas: your body, your mind, and your actions. If those three are aligned, life moves forward. But if they're not, then you start to drift. First, your body. Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. Said by Jim Rohn. If you don't know Jim Rohn, he's got a lot of great material online. He is the godfather of self-help. Worth checking out. So your body is not separate from your mind. It affects your energy, your confidence, your focus, your mood. A lot of people treat physical care like it's optional. It's not. Physical care is foundational, especially as you get older. You don't get to maintain without effort. You don't get to coast along anymore. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to become a gym fanatic, but I'm saying you need a standard, some minimum level of physicality. Again, your body is where you can exert the most control in your life. And when you take control of your body, it radiates out into every other part of your life. Because you get to choose the food you eat, how much you exercise. You get to choose what you do with your body. Second, your mind. This is perhaps my favorite quote of all time. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are correct. Said by Henry Ford, creator of the Ford Motor Company. Belief is very, very important in life. Okay, your beliefs will affect everything. Really try to develop the habit of listening to people when they speak. People give themselves away very quickly by the words they choose to use about themselves and about their life. For example, have you ever heard anyone say, every time I go on vacation, I get sick? Guess what happens to that person? Every time they go on vacation, they do get sick because the subconscious mind says, oh, that must be part of our belief system. That's our identity. Let's do that. Okay, so it's very important to monitor your thoughts and the words you use, especially about yourself. So most people don't have a knowledge problem. They have a clarity problem. There's too much noise, too much scrolling, too much distraction, too much random input. And when your attention is constantly being pulled in every direction, you stop thinking clearly. You stop deciding and you start reacting. Does anyone here check their phone the very first thing in the morning? Okay, perhaps. That is a terrible habit. You need to stop that. Because what you're doing is you are reacting to everything else going on in the world. What you should do first thing is take a moment for yourself and think about what you want to accomplish today. What are your goals? Who are you going to be today? Okay? Set that up first. It makes a huge difference in how your day plays out. Similar to people who check their work emails first thing in the morning. You go right into reaction mode. Now you're worried about everybody else's problems, and you can't focus on what you need to do. So put yourself first, especially first thing in the morning. So mental clarity matters. Reading matters. Reflection matters. Quiet matters. Actually sitting quietly alone with your own thoughts matters. Where do most people get their best ideas? In the shower, right? Where it's quiet and nobody else is around. Third, your actions. Because your life is not built on what you intend to do. Your life is built on what you repeatedly do. And this is where habits come in. I like to think of it like this. Your habits are votes. Your actions are votes. And every action is a vote for the kind of person you are going to be. You train, that's a vote. You skip exercise, that's a vote. You focus, that's a vote. You distract yourself on Facebook, also a vote. You do that hard thing, vote. You avoid it again, vote. That identity gets built one choice at a time. So every night while you sleep, all those votes are counted up and you wake up exactly as the person you voted for. And believe me, every vote counts. But the good news is it doesn't have to be complicated, because complicated systems usually fail. So I like the idea of what I call a minimum standard. Not a perfect day, not an ideal schedule, but a minimum standard. Something that you can do even on your worst day. Because if you can win on your worst day, you build momentum that carries you into your better days. So my version is simple. Every day, try to do 3 things. One thing for your body, one action for your mind, and one action that moves you towards your goal or builds discipline. That's it. One thing for your body, a walk, a workout, stretching. One thing for your mind, reading, writing, reflecting, learning. And one action that moves you towards your goal. Is your goal to lose weight? Is your goal to write a book? Is your goal to build a woodshed? Every day, take an action to make that goal a reality. Or discipline. Do one thing you don't feel like doing and do it anyway. Because discipline is not built when things are easy. It's built when your brain says, I don't feel like doing this. And you respond, we're doing it anyway. That is the training. That is where people change. Not through perfection, but through repeated, focused direction. So let's get into some practical tips here. First, posture. I constantly tell myself throughout the day, walk tall, walk tall, walk tall. And when I find myself hunched over my desk at my computer, I remind myself, sit up straight, sit tall. We are in a lifelong fight against gravity. If you've seen someone who's very old, sometimes they can't even straighten up anymore. Okay? When you walk tall and sit tall, it's good for your blood flow, it's good for your energy flow, and it makes you feel more confident. And people look at you and they say, that guy must have the answers. Look at him. Look how straight he's standing. So remind yourself constantly to walk tall. One of the things I started doing with my mobile phone, and in fact in the United States it's become a crisis with young people who have neck problems because they're like this all the time. So I started holding my phone up here when I look at it. So I have to stand tall just to read the screen. Breathing. Have you ever seen a little baby breathe? They always breathe through their nose, don't they? That's how we're supposed to breathe, through our nose. And it's hilarious when they get a sniffle because they constantly blow that snot bubble out of their nose. But breathing through your mouth is like eating through your nose. That's not what it is designed for. Your nose has these little hairs in it to act as a filter, to take out the dust and particles. And when you take the air in through your nasal cavity, the temperature gets adjusted so your lungs can take it in easier. And breathing is interesting because usually it's a function of the subconscious mind. But it's one of the things that we can take over and focus on, which is good because most of us are constantly in a high stress state. We are in fight or flight mode. And when you focus on your breathing, it can calm down your entire body, reduce your stress. So, a couple breathing techniques I'll share with you right now. One that's very easy. Breathe out more than you breathe in. So if you breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds. If you breathe in on an average of 5, breathe out for 7, and so on. Very easy to do. In fact, I was doing it before I started this presentation to reduce my stress level. The other one is called box breathing. So box breathing is assuming we breathe for about 4 seconds. You breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4 again. So it goes like this. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. And that will also help you to relax and reduce stress. I recently found out that the U.S. Navy SEALs, one of our elite fighting forces, they are actually very focused on breathing techniques for all their soldiers to help reduce stress in war situations. Thought that was interesting. And you might have heard of this soccer player named Erling Haaland. I heard he's very popular in Norway. He actually tapes his mouth shut at night to force himself to breathe through his nose while he sleeps. That's a little more hardcore, but it is something that people do, especially athletes. It's becoming very popular with them. Recording your meals. So if you're interested in making tweaks to your diet, I recommend that you use the notes function on your phone, and for the next 2 weeks, write down everything you eat and drink. Now you don't have to say I had 4 deciliters of orange juice or 73 grams of chicken. You can keep it generic, a glass of orange juice, a piece of chicken, some rice. And then after 2 weeks, go back and look at that list and do it in real time with each meal, otherwise you forget things. And I'm certain you'll look back and you'll say, okay, there are things here that I could reduce. For example, if you're drinking 3 sodas a day, I'm certain you could get by on 2 sodas a day for a couple weeks. Do that for a couple weeks, then reduce it down to 1 soda a day. Do that for a couple weeks, and then see if you can replace that soda altogether. And then go back 30 days from then, and then try and have a soda, and your body will be like, whoa, 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 what is this garbage? Okay? There's also things you may want to add. You might realize, okay, I'm not eating enough fruits or vegetables. I'm not getting enough protein. Okay? So it's very useful to record your meals for a couple weeks and then take account and then start making small changes, just small changes. Do one thing for a couple weeks. When you get used to that, do another thing for the next couple weeks. Again, small changes over time. The next thing is walking. Walking is a super underrated exercise. A great hack for losing weight is walking after a meal. If you can do it after breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's great. If not, start with dinner or whatever your biggest meal of the day is. Just go for a 15 or 20-minute walk. And now's a great time to get into that habit while the weather's nice. There's a hypothesis that women live longer than men because after dinner, the men go and sit down and relax, and the women are up in the kitchen cleaning and moving around. So men, if you want to live longer, start doing the dishes. Sitting is the new smoking. I'm sure you've heard this. And I only recently found this out, and I didn't know that the heart only pumps about 1/3 of the blood around your body. The rest of the blood is dependent on movement. That's why sitting for so long is dangerous, because the blood isn't flowing. The body can't take care of itself. So what I've started doing is, if I'm going to be sitting for a long time at my desk, is I set a 22-minute timer. I just like the number 22. So I set that timer on my phone, and every 22 minutes it goes off. I stand up, shake it out a little bit, shake out my legs, walk around. You could do some squats, do some jumping jacks, just move around for a minute or two. Then get back to work. You'll also find that because you have brought your mind and your focus back into your body, it is also better for your work. You become more focused when you start again. So it's good to take those breaks. Programming. There's an old expression in English that goes, "Give me a child for the first 7 years and I will show you the man." Which means that we learn most of who we become in the first 7 years, right? A baby is like a factory fresh iPhone. It has an operating system, but there's no programs or apps loaded yet. That's why children learn so fast, okay? They are in what is called theta state. You've heard of different brain states, alpha, beta, delta, theta. Theta is the state we are in when we are learning things. So the first 7 years, most of the time a child is in theta state. They are absorbing everything they see, hear, and experience, which is why most of us are eerily similar to our parents or whoever raised us, okay? Because whoever spent the most time with us, that's who we were getting our programming from, our beliefs, our identity. Now, the good news is that that programming is not final. You can change that programming. And in fact, we are in theta state guaranteed 2 times every day. Once just as we're about to fall asleep and just as we come out of sleep. So we can leverage that. We can take advantage. So think about the person you want to become, or think about a problem you need to solve. If you want to say, if you want to be more healthy, and you tell yourself, "I'm always healthy and happy. I always make good food choices. I love exercising." You can record that on your phone, on your voice recorder. And then what you do is, before you go to bed, you play that recording on repeat. And it plays all through the night. And it's guaranteed to hit you in your 2 times of theta state. Now, of course, if we're going to bring our phone into the bedroom, there are rules. Rule number 1, put that phone into airplane mode, flymodus. Rule number 2, turn on the do not disturb so you do not get any calls or messages. Rule number 3, turn off the alert sound and the ringer. And then what you do is you put that phone somewhere in your bedroom and you turn the volume way down low. So low that when you're in your bed, you practically can't hear it. You're aware that there's sound coming out of that phone, but you can't really make out the words. But don't worry, because your subconscious mind is hearing it loud and clear. It is well aware of everything going on in that room while you're sleeping. Another thing what we can do is mantras. So a mantra is just a phrase that you tell yourself over and over again. I'm always healthy and happy. I'm always healthy and happy. When I wake up, I tell myself I'm always healthy and happy. When I brush my teeth, in my head I'm saying I'm always healthy and happy. Every time I check my phone, first thing I say to myself is I'm always healthy and happy. You're programming yourself. It's like self-hypnotism, okay? Because you have to realize that all day long, everyone else is trying to program you, right? That's the whole basis of advertising. You're being programmed by companies, by TV shows, by other people, okay? So anytime you can take control of your own programming, you need to do it. That'll initiate real change. Identity. Remember, identity was lodged into the subconscious mind. So what you want to do is you want to create the identity that you want, right? I'm always healthy. I love training. And your identity is created by not only the thoughts in your head, but also the words you speak to others. So always speak kindly of yourself. Talk yourself up. And what happens is, the more you repeat these things, the more you pretend to be this person, your subconscious mind goes to work and it'll do everything in its power to help you. Okay, so just like habits, subconscious mind is running your identity program. So you kind of fake it till you make it, we say. Sure, you may not be a super athlete yet, but keep telling yourself that you are. Keep doing the things that will push you in that direction. And over time, that shapes your identity. Action. The universe likes speed and action. So most people think that everything has to be perfect before they attempt something new. It doesn't. Just go. Just jump in. The best way to learn is by doing something. Your life is a collection of what you do, not what you intend to do, but your actions. And like Master Yoda once wisely said, do or do not. There is no try. So there's a belief we've been sold in the mainstream media that after 40 it's all downhill, which I certainly don't buy that. The second half of life should actually be stronger if you stop drifting, because now you understand time better. You understand consequences better. You understand what matters most. So the issue is not age. The issue is whether you are living intentionally or just drifting. And if I could leave you with one simple message, it would be this: don't wait for a big change. Start small, start now. Take one step for your body, one step for your mind, and one step towards your goal that builds discipline. Because small actions repeated consistently shape your future. And if this resonated with you, this is exactly why I wrote The Middle-Aged Master. So I take these ideas and I try to put them into a practical system that you can actually use. I've read other self-help books, and usually it's 90% about the author and 10% things you can use. So I tried to do it the opposite way. I tried to give a little bit of information about myself for context, and then tried to give you as many practical tips as possible. I talk about everything I could think of. So this is a QR code, and this takes you to a website for everyone here tonight. There's a bundle pack. It's the ebook and the audiobook together, and there's a 30% discount on it. If you click on the QR code here, it brings you to a very short and sweet website here. So you just click the buttons. That takes you to the bundle, where you can get the book by itself or the audiobook by itself. And you can also read the first chapter for free. So that's it. Thank you very much.